you were making earlier about using media for social change and using it in a way to engage with communities seems to become further and further and
Give me
further.
a little more volume.
Excuse me? Louder?
A little louder because of the hearing.
Yeah, I
Thank
think public access as an ethos that even beyond the specific capacity of public access in the States, but public access where media for social change as an ethos seems to become more marginal, and television as a whole, even public service television seems to become more and more ephemeral, and so I think it's an important value to nurture, for the next generation and for producers. So.
Can you speak louder? He's here.
Okay.
Sort of shout.
Is that
the room.
I mean, is that the gist of it? I mean, when I moved to London, I had very much absorbed the lessons of George and the values of using media for change, and I had set myself a sort of a challenge: can I possibly make something for mainstream television that would transcend just something that kind of went out and was finished and ephemeral and gone out and forgotten? And one of the first things I made for British television in the UK was a program about the peacemaking process that not only would introduce conflict resolution skills in a community and document how they function, but train young people in a community in these skills of conflict resolution, so that when the program was finished, a capacity would still exist for kids to use conflict resolutions between gangs, and it was very gratifying that it was a project. It was for mainstream television. It was broadcast, but it still managed to create a difference in the community among kids and learning conflict resolution skills and using them. But it was very, very, very hard. Television in general, even public service television, is becoming more and more prescriptive, and bringing about social change is not one of the prescriptive values of a lot of television these days. So it is, the ethos of public service, of public access television, from its early days and to the extent it still exists, is very precious and an inspiration that really transcends how it's used on public access channels themselves.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Oh, here's another person who wants to contribute. Can you get it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a problem. I had strokes, so please bear with me. I'm planning on having a show that will be called Brass Tacks. It will be dealing with social problems and politics. The question I'm asked by people who are going to host the show, I will not be the on-air host. I will be in the control room, and I will be feeding questions through the teleprompter to host, who will ask the questions and have questions of their own. So that is how do we find out what the results are of the show. I have no idea how you would get that from public television. The only way I know is through emails, and that's not a very good indicator. I would appreciate an answer from you, because I guess you know the answer to this question. What I've put together is a panel of one, two, three people and a guest whom they're to look into the history of a problem and how it is being dealt with or not dealt with. It is to be a show that is picking a subject and looking at it in depth. It is supposed to, in my estimation, one that is in between Harold and Joe. Harold asked the questions, but in the area that his show is a show of conversation, of speaking in a conversational tone between him and the guest. He does not have the time, to sit and keep asking and looking into the area of interest. But he brings out what these areas of these areas of interest. And Joe's show is with people speaking, but there's nobody there, has a panel looking at them and questioning it. So this is I look at it as taking the inroad between when a question being asked and how you reach the answer.
Well, now, Harold asked me to begin.
So it's not something to replace them. It is something taking an inroad
Well,
between their.
let me explain that Harold asked me to describe how public access got started. And I gave you a very narrow definition because that's what we were trying to do at the time. But as I said at the beginning, history is made by the people who live it. And you people have lived it, so you've certainly taken public access in a very different direction from what we had in mind at the beginning. It doesn't mean that it was wrong. It doesn't mean that we were wrong or that you were wrong. It's just that it's gone in a different direction.
From to what? From what to what? What's
It's become a vehicle for individual producers who then take people on their shows, but it's their show. It's a very different thing from what we had at the beginning.
At the beginning, you said the idea was...
The idea was to have community groups do the programming. This was a way of getting the material out to those community groups. You wanted to know how it started. That was what the idea we had at the beginning.
That would have been
It may have been impossible to continue it in that way. I just don't know.
Was that the vision of Sidney Dean also, George? Do you think, as you remember?
Sidney Dean was particularly interested in clearing the way for the City Club to have its programs on. That was the first thing, because the City Club was and is a reform group for the city, and he wanted the meetings on so that other people could see what the City Club was doing and could join them.
Yeah, and that was a civil society entity.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's significant because civil society was able to have some bit of influence in a unique way at that time. And didn't he say many times over, public access channels, many public access channels, and advocated for that among all the town fathers and the people that were involved at that formative period? If I read the literature and that sort of thing, as I recall.
Okay.
And he, oh yes, here, Josh.
I just want to say one thing.
Keep your mic.
As I say, maybe I didn't articulate it properly, but I do bring on community groups. Like I had the No Police State Coalition on my program, and I urged them to do their own program. So as a result, Jeffrey Blank does his own program, the president. The Vice President Jason Blank and Shireen Carrazzo do their own program. And I want to say something to this young man. Perhaps on corporate media, they might not appreciate you as a host on their program because, they are commercial personalities. But on public access, you would be an excellent host. And I am not being I'm not patronizing. You would be an excellent host, and you should have no fear of being a host, because I listened to you, you were articulate, you were interesting, and I could watch you for much more than a half hour.
Yeah,
So
well,
there you have it.
Yeah, and it's very democratic. How many producers do we have there at MNN now? I mean,
They say we have 2,500 producers, which
that's
are a lot of
humanity.
producers.
I don't know.
That's a lot of humanity. I don't know, but because the networks are looking for a star. They're looking for eyeballs. They're looking for ratings.
Yeah.
They're looking for advertising revenue.
Yeah,
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
yeah. So anyway, that's really what I had, and I've talked other people in doing shows. I talked Gloria, into doing a few shows, and she said, well, you can't be the host, the person of the coalition, like of the single room occupancy coalition has to be a host, and she was, because of the rules. So I have gotten community groups, and I've spoken to the Shakur Morales group to do its own show, and I hope they will pick it up. And a lot of young people doing interesting things, like Hank Williams at the CUNY Grad Center, who's one of the foremost young scholars in African American literature. And he promised me he would go to work and do his own show on African literature, and of course bring in a lot of community, a lot of students, and a lot of people from CUNY. And I've tried to get, I did bring over the, from WBAI, the people who do CUNY, a mission deferred, and we did a couple of programs under that name, and we will continue to try to get people to do their own shows. And I have spoken to members, you know, Polar Gloria picks up some homeless people, and I've tried to talk them into coming and doing their shows. They are very intelligent and eccentric intellectuals, and they would make splendid shows. And anyway, that's what I want to say now. You watch.
And they're able to make it. The cost. It doesn't have to be a business to do it.
Yes, it does. That's what's so wonderful. As I say, I dislike the word free because it isn't free. You know, you have to put in an awful lot of work. You have to do research. You eventually have to learn Final Cut Pro, and you have to do a lot of editing, and you have to, I mean, I watch Harold work. He works day and night. He's at the computer for hours and hours. He's on the telephone for hours and hours. And it's a lot of work. And it's hard. And you certainly can't classify it as free by any way whatsoever. And that's what I have to say now.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Oh, somebody else? Go ahead. You want You want me? I saw Ted Turner. He was on I'd done a program with him back in 1980 when we started. He's an incredible guy. And he happened to be on Charlie Rose. Rose is really good. He's really good. He's really sharp. He's sort of tuned into the establishment pretty well and everything. We have community groups. We have the Senate of the United States. We have the presidency. We have the political parties. Those are political groups, the whole society. But he was on, it was a very inspired thing where he said to him, he said, there's only one issue. We're coming to an election now, right? We're coming to an election. There's a lot of dialectic going between the Democrats and Republicans in the traditional way. And Mr. Turner said it in a way, it was really a good program. He said there's only really one issue, and he said, and the issue is, and it's when you back off a bit too, we've got all this technological capability and all the modeling from Joshua Lederberg to Michio Kaku and physicists, Teller studied people and so forth. They say now, and even some of the things that came off this, what do you call it, space, what do you call that, SDI? You know, the Defense Initiative, the Star Wars thing and everything, that there are weapon systems now, and Mr. Turner just summed it up in a pattern, and he said the only issue is that we now have the capability, if there's an unleashing of the destructive capability of our weapon systems that leads our research and leads our economy all around the world and so forth, we can eliminate the human species in a half an hour. That's a new existential reality in the world. We didn't have that in the Second World War. We didn't have that until about, by the best research I can come across, until about the year 1970. It was about the year 1970 those weapons became species lethal. And we're here now in the evolution of consciousness. And on the other hand, we had Murray Bookchin, we had some other scholars of serious note, among them Bucky Fuller, but not only him, James Lovelock with the Gaia principle, and other things on the other side, who say there were incredible transformations occurring in a yin-yang sort of sense to that destructive capability. We now have a capability to liberate humanity in a way that has not been characteristic of any of history or available to us at a capability level until about the year 1970. That's the year public access was born, institutionally. That's all the point I'm trying to make. That's the point that we're trying to make. This is our constituency is not a local community board only or a group here. It is the whole of the human society, and there are questions to be answered, and the answers are going to come first. It's going to come. Communications is the DNA of the society. It's going to come out of public access first before it comes out of any of the networks, and it's going to come multimedia. And that's where the answers and the patterns are going to come. And that's why it's got a very important mission in terms of helping to program that DNA communication thing in such a way to take the model. And remember, it's so unique and nobody pays any attention to it. we are financed by a very unique system. That is the whole public access system across the country. We should celebrate it, and we should give real attention, and the society should, because you have a little window that is given to the people in order to have a way in which they can communicate their own thoughts and concerns and so forth. And the financing was set up outside of the dialectic of power that operates the planet. You see, it's a major thing. And it's going to come out of public access. The answers are going to come out of the people. You got 2,000 people here. You got 3,000 places across the country. And the financing for that is not in the normal dialectic. It makes public access the leading place from which the answers that society, world society needs are going to come. We should help to try to inspire the producers who are doing this to realize they're part of where the real action is, not the networks and not the other things that have come, but it's coming out of public access is the most important place in which the serious considerations involving the people and pattern recognition and understanding, and it's going to be able to inform not only the communications, but it's all, so you have the means, access to the means of communication for the people. For the people, it's never been that. It's always just the political. And then it might be in the fullness of time, we'll be able to extend that idea to the means of production, to the means of production itself. We live in a plutocratic world. All the assets are owned by a tiny plutocratic class in every political entity and all the international systems. They're heading toward Armageddon. They're heading toward some sort of a thing because they don't have vision. They're going to need vision of how we're going to operate spaceship Earth, for want of a better term. It's going to come out of public access. It's not going to come out of the networks. The more you're ensconced in the historic and inherited institutional structures has been transformed within the zeitgeist, the more you're not going to be able to see like the fish outside the fishbowl. It's going to come from the artists and from the people, in my humble opinion. I didn't mean to carry on.
I wish I could be as enthusiastic as you are about the future of public access.
Okay, talk please to us.
But I'm afraid that the forces against us are very strong. Political forces right now have caused us to lose the requirements in 14 states.
At least 36.
And it's going, we need to, we haven't done a good enough job.
We need PR.
We haven't done a good enough job of convincing the community of our importance.
Well,
and that's why I keep saying community groups need to be involved to protect it and defend it. For example, we've had so-called PEG, Public Educational and Community Access. Well,
no, if I may
when it began, I was a little worried about that because I said, you know, the PEG was dreamed up when the cable companies were promising us everything in order to get the franchises.
Right.
And I said, uh-oh, if it's the government access, they said, no, each will have its own studios, each will have its own staff, and so forth and so on. I said, wait a minute. When the cable wars are over, there'll be a fight over money. City Hall will have the first big. Then the school board will have the second, and we'll come last. Even more important, I said, if government access is just limited to the City Hall, then it's going to be a mouthpiece for the people who are running City Hall,
like always,
rather than an exchange. If the educational access is run by the school board, then it's going to be a mouthpiece for the superintendent of schools, rather than an exchange between parents, teachers, and the students. And public access will come third. Fortunately, in many smaller places in the country, all three of those are run together. And that makes a big difference. Unfortunately, in most other places, it's not. And we have suffered grievously because we didn't have the kind of support that would have given us.
That's an interesting take. Do you know what the figures are, George, on
I
that?
don't.
How many public access facilities are there?
We don't know.
How many of them have a real serious franchising relationship with the cable industry in order to get their capital and operating costs from a franchising agreement in the public sector, not the educational or not the government? Those are traditional. Those are traditional power relationships. But the thing that the charge is to the people of Manhattan.
No, Harold, I'm saying that the all three should be together.
You think so? Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Because otherwise it becomes a mouthpiece for City Hall, it becomes a mouthpiece for the Board of Education.
Well, it's being argued for do it, isn't it? Mr. Cosgrave is going to be doing the negotiating, and
That's right. Once we have the other setup, it's very hard to get it back.
And Verizon's now building
Yes,
out their
that's right.
BIOS, and they've committed to recognizing the obligation to meet this franchising, which will get some considerable money from the otherwise retained earnings of the Time Warner and RCN companies will come to support something like Manhattan Network, and this will happen in California, and it seems to be accepted law. And the cable industry is negotiating, and Verizon says they will meet as well as whatever the terms that are being offered by Time Warner and RCN will be met or better by them.
Well,
They'll
I'm
bring some
hoping
competition.
that the FCC will be more friendly after November.
Yes.
But I was at the Media Democracy Conference 3 weeks ago, and the two FCC commissioners who are on our side were there explaining the importance of us putting pressure on the FCC and the upcoming government in order to have what we want rather than what we're beginning to get.
Is Martin leaving? The chairman?
Oh no,
No, he's still there, so it's still
he's
true.
there until the new administration comes in.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's still there. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm very enthusiastic and thinking that, well, we got to breathe life into the fact that we are in a unique situation. I remember talking to a fellow when I did programs way back in '73, and I said, I want to do a program. We got Telstar. We're going to connect. We'll have our intellectual leadership be the programming. I was thinking Fuller, McLuhan, Frere, and these kind of things, maybe a banker or two. And he said, well, that's interesting, Harold. He said, I'm thinking of starting something to get the House of Representatives. I'm thinking of calling it, it's going to be cable, and it's going to be delivered satellite, and it's going to be public affairs. That was Brian Lamb, which is starting to think with C-SPAN. C-SPAN is a feather in the cap of the cable industry. And it could well be that public access could become something in democracy terms. It's so democratic. It's so open to the people, uniquely so. I don't know that we have sold it to ourselves or to the public in general. Who is going to deny the idea that it's good that there be facilities for the people?
Okay,
to
now one of the
communicate?
reasons why we haven't sold it is because it's so often pictured as a bunch of egomaniacs with their own programs.
Well, that's democracy in a way, but
That's
that doesn't...
democracy in a way, but when the people are having to are being told that you are supporting this,
Well,
then the
yeah, but
question comes up, should we continue it?
Well, the cable companies are supporting it out of their other... No, they are supporting it through
I
a
know,
franchise
yes, yeah,
agreement,
yeah.
and they seem to accept it. They're going to
Yeah.
accept it in California, they're going to accept it in Oregon, they're going to accept it in Iowa, they're going to accept... That's a major step in terms of opening up communication to the people. It should be celebrated by the society at large, and even the cable industry could be sold.
It was
as they were
accepted
sold
in all 48 states at one time, and we've lost 14 of them.
Well, we still got 36, George, and we have not yet begun to fight. Or to... oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
But I'm sorry, Harold.
No problem at all. I haven't been to talk to you.
But the thing is, I'm from Philadelphia. I didn't see anything like this there.
You certainly didn't.
I didn't see anything like it in Williamsport, which is where I went to college, like coming, and I was teaching there for a few years. Nothing even remotely like. And nowhere that I've lived along the East Coast, most cities, did I see something like M&N. And one day I came here and was channel surfing, and so Paula Gloria had some programs on 9/11, and the next day I found Harold and then Joe, and I thought, you know, this is great. I never saw shows like this where someone was actually asking an intelligent question instead of just the usual, how do you do that? Or why do you know that? How do you know that? Type of thing. And accepting the usual pablum that we're all supposed to, that we've all been conditioned to accept. And the programs on Truth for a Change, actually, you get truth for a change. Yeah, you know, so I can't imagine losing these shows. We should expand the. We should expand them. We should have more like them. We like you're saying that 14 states have lost
The requirements.
they've
How?
State legislators.
okay. Harold,
Yes.
do you want this?
No, give it to Joe. Let Joe.
David, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Harold.
I'm sorry. Could we take a break because I want to say goodbye to David Chopin.
George, maybe before, I am curious,
Yes, say a few words.
within those 14, 16 states?
14 states.
14 states.
I'm not up on the latest, but
Does, to your knowledge, does access actually still exist in them, although it may not be a requirement? What's the status of the access itself?
that's right. The cable companies are not required to.
But have the access centers survived in some of those states?
Oh yes,
Okay.
it's continuing in some places,
Right.
but it's but more difficult. You see, I feel personally responsible in a strange way because I helped create a whole superstructure, and many of those people who are now losing their jobs have spent half their lives devoted to public access. And now they're losing their jobs, and I feel very self-conscious. I feel very worried about this. I feel concerned. So it's that kind of relationship now.
What can we do to try and call attention to that as an access association and
Yes,
call attention to that?
well,
try and counter that in a
Okay,
better way?
on the 10th of July, many of us will be at the Alliance for Community Media
Yeah.
conference in Washington, and we will talk to our legislators.
What date, George? Could you say it again? please?
July the 10th.
Yeah, and how can they be in touch and the citizens effectively become aware of that, might want to get involved?
They should talk to their state legislators. I mean, to their the congressional representatives.
Are we going to have something something on the MNN site talking about that?
I hope so.
Good, that would be a
Yes,
good thing.
that's
And we'll
right.
try to do it here.
Yes. Okay.
That's good.
All right.
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a break just to say bye to?
Are you Davey?
Yeah.
You leaving, Dave?
I'm sorry, I'm,
I know you got an appointment, I know. Thanks for
Let's
coming.
have a
Great
break.
pleasure.
David.
He wants to talk to him, so why don't we stop the cameras? You two
Yes.
say goodbye, maybe we'll come back and round it up. Stop yours, Joe, or do you stop?
We want to sit down?
Joe?
it's
Joe?
very nice to see you.
Thank you for your
Oh,
indulgence.
no, it's really,
The man.
And Joe,
Good amazing. He's gone all over the world.
Okay,
Mm.
George, I
No,
want to
so
let you know
courageous.
we're recording.
What's that?
We're recording.
Okay.
Okay.
And it was good to say goodbye to David, he's a great guy. But just to make sure you're getting good sound and everything. Could
I'll
you
leave
talk?
this here. I don't know where your bag is.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, George is loud and clear, that's good. Okay, take it away, George, please, I really appreciate your coming. So could you fill us in a little more on that, George, about the 14 states? When did that happen, under what circumstances, why did it happen, how can it be prevented from happening elsewhere?
What?
The fact that 14 states through their state legislatures have...
I don't want to speak to that because I don't have the accurate figures.
Okay, yeah.
I got something to say.
Yeah, go ahead, talk, look,
But
talk.
you
Joe.
got a pen to camera at me. What?
Okay,
What?
what you got?
What I'm hearing is that you intended, originally, the concept was the argument that won the legislators over was communities being helped to function better as communities. And instead, the individuals came in almost, whatever the model is, sort of like a disease, a parasite. Something different happened than what was planned. And you're saying that when the legislators get to arguing which way to go, they do view public access by looking through what is actually produced, that a lot of it is narcissistic and not particularly useful to anything, and that's a reality. And I wanted to go the next step and say that Harold is celebrating the fact that Wowee, they were able to bargain with the corporations to throw a little money in the direction of the commons or the public and all that. Wowee, isn't that nice? But in fact, in general, they have to be drag kicking and screaming in that direction. And you get credit for having done some of the dragging. But the big jump here is YouTube and similar sites. That since my drive was to talk to the whole public, YouTube does it. So when the corporations are looking for an excuse to quit giving any money to public access, to the extent there's characters like me, they can say, you don't need us, go to YouTube. And it sounds like a pretty good argument. What YouTube doesn't provide is they don't give you a camera, they don't give you a studio, but nowadays that's so cheap you don't need it, you can buy your own. So, my 2 cents.
How long are we going to have YouTube? That will go.
YouTube's great. I mean,
But how
it's
long
really-
will we have it? How long are we going to have YouTube?
Well,
How long is YouTube going to be available to us? Because like Joe is saying, the cable companies say to us, go to YouTube. But how long are we going to have YouTube?
Well, how long do you think? I think the thing looks very good. It's coming out of the labs now. YouTube just upped the size of what you had to upload from 100 megabytes to over a gigabyte. A pristine program is now about 2.8 gigabytes for a pristine hour program, and they just upped it, and it's coming out of the labs, the computer labs, and the development is coming to where we are going to have. It's a large kind of idea. We're going to be coming to an abundant capacity They had the Sloan Commission report back about 1970 where the major figures in the industry and intellectuals and academia did a thing, and they said cable television, remember 1970, cable television, and they called it the medium of abundance. And we're becoming to an abundant capability. I think YouTube, and if YouTube does not keep up with the trend, then there will be others that will, because it's coming out of the exponentially increasing communication capability that is part of the time in which we live. As to the thing about the cable companies, I know there are lots of people that really like in the cable industry. I've done industries in programming at National Cable Television Association meetings way back in the 70s. A lot of people. Brian Lamb loves it. He loves public access. Ted Turner loves public access. He thinks it's great. The citizenry at large would like very much the idea of a democratic movement that allows there to be a way for the public to participate in communication, because it is inherently democratic. That is, if you have democratic inclinations. Most of your institutions don't. Your programming institutions are looking for a star who they can get ratings from, so that they can get, American Idol or some program that will get them advertising revenue for their business model and all that sort of thing. But there are a lot of people in the cable industry and in the society in general who will like the idea of there being a democratically inclined movement within communication. And I think even people within the cable television industry, many of them, if you talk to it, they're very proud of C-SPAN. And C-SPAN's going to evolve. It's a feather, it's a, what do they call it, the crown and the jewel, or the jewel and the crown. It is something that they can celebrate, because it's not just market-oriented. It's not just, ratings-oriented, that sort of thing. And the idea of public access as an institution that gives the ability for the people to communicate in a democratic way, particularly as more and more good ideas or relevant ideas comprehensively considered are going to come out of that realm more than they're going to come out of the networks. So I think that it could be a public relations feather in the cap of the cable industry, and in a non-zero sum way feed the interests of everybody concerned, including a liberating element within the society. You got the communication network, and more importantly, it's the financing. They've got this, I think we should understand that, because we tend to be idealists and so forth, but it's a financing model that gives a little sliver of retained earnings from the corporate structure. We live in a very plutocratic system. The assets are all owned by a tiny class in every group, every country. It's trending that way more and more. It's a very plutocratic thing. This is something that will give a model for opening up the means of communication to the people, and then it might depend on what we come up with. Democracy is always thought by aristocrats or aristos or something as a very nasty thing. Who wants to hear what the people say? They've never wanted to hear what the people say, because the people are just unwashed masses and don't know the way the experts do, who are benefiting from the system in place. But if they come up with that, then that is going to lead to where, that's DNA of the communication, and that could lead to where that model, where the corporation has a responsibility to support the people in terms of the service it's offering, that model could be extended to the much more inclusive, that's what I think, that model could be extended to the much more inclusive influence over the means of production itself. General Motors has no such thing. The steel industry has no such obligation. The agriculture, big agriculture doesn't. None of the large corporate entities that control all the technology increasingly responsible for production own all the assets, only give a little bit of something called a wage to the people who fit into their pattern and so forth. But it could be that we would have an influence over the means of production itself. And it's coming out of the civil society pioneering effort of people like George and Sidney Dean and others who set the pattern, and I think that's what makes it unique. That's my way of thinking. I think it's I think the public access movement and the ACAP, if I may, the producers, who are going to be able to get some sort of a thing to give and keep integrity within the operation of the movement itself. We get bad words for some people are taking over some of those administrations and they do not run it well. They do not run it adequately. They don't keep up with any kind of best practices in terms of how they're going to operate, that sort of thing. The producers have an interest in that. And the producers can get papers together that will incorporate that thinking and keep integrity to the vision that public access is, has been, and will be in terms of the providing of the information the society needs in order to bring in a system that's going to, above all else, stave off Armageddon, and on the other hand, offer a liberating potential that is totally unique in all of human history. We're coming to a liberating capability. We are actually transcending material scarcity in terms of our capability. We need institutions that are going to be able to make us get some control, the people, over the means of production in order to not only have capital formation for growth, but also distribution of income for people to be able to participate not only as just purchasers or employees, but they're going to become people who have a mean. You're going to have to finance it in a way that the people will have a stake. I think we're coming to a major break point. It's bigger than the paradigm shift that occurred when Copernicus and Galileo proposed that we lived in a heliocentric rather than a geocentric universe. It played hell on people's identity. Hieronymus Bosch. It's bigger than that. We are transcending scarcity. We're transcending scarcity on the living side, as Mr. Fuller and others. There were others too that came up with that. That is the reality that's going to be able to become, and we're going to have a system that's going to be able to play. It's going to have to include everybody, non-zero sum, and that includes the people responsible for the outdated historical institutions that we live in terms of. We need a transformative vision.
More, Harold.
No, that's my thinking, and I think it's public access is where
Hallelujah.
it comes. No, I mean I believe it in public access. ACAP, if the Association of Cable Access, if the alliance and the people who do that cannot come up with good practices or a way of making sure the integrity and the vision and the idealistic vision that represented cannot come up with ways to protect that adequately, the producers should fill the void. That's why the Association of Cable Access Producers is going to become one of the very most influential and important institutions in the evolution of this society and world society.
What are they going
and
to do?
that's what we're doing.
What is in a few words? In a few words, what are they going to be doing? Producers.
Well, not me. I talk too much.
No, and make it say it in a few words.
Well, I said it in as few words as you can.
No, just like 10 or 12 words, or 25 at most.
Liberation may be at hand. It may be absolutely essential. We're at a point of speciation where it's going, after 200,000 years of human history on this planet, we're at a point where we can, in a half an hour, wipe out the species. That is an existential challenge to the human species to come up with something on the other side of that destructive scenario. That is liberation.
That's more than 25 words, Harold. Let me.
James Joyce said history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. We are about to awaken from the injustices that have been characteristic from the emperors to the kings of England to the investment hedge fund people now who run everything and have that. They don't have a vision. They need a vision. They don't have a vision that is required. It's going to come out of the people and out of public access and the unique qualities of it. I wholeheartedly think that is maybe the last best hope for humanity on this planet. And I thank you, George, for starting it, and Sidney Dean and the people that put the institutional framework in. We're going to get control over the means of production and a distribution system.
When you say production, you mean video production?
No, I'm saying automobiles, steel, agriculture. That's all owned by a tiny group of people who own all the assets. And we only say, well, give us a little job. John Maynard Keynes said, you are going to have massive technologically induced unemployment. We distribute all income to the folks through jobs. The people that own the assets are over here. the people have to have a stake of an ownership stake in the technological aspects
Can
of
I
production.
say a few words, Harold?
Of course, talk away.
There's a group called Apollo Alliance, which is a leader. I mean, everybody in, like, the Clintons know all about this.
Mhm.
Hillary Clinton was a keynote speaker in May of last year. And they are a group of environmentalists and union people who know that solar revolution is in progress, and they're gonna have tremendous jobs. There are 16,000 companies right now that could, if the money were up front, they would take a year or two to put for wind power, wind generators to build the parts.
We could do it. We can create jobs. They used to have chattel slavery, and they had people dragging stones across the sands of the Nile Valley in order to build pyramids. We can create jobs. The thing is that the technology is displacing, maybe ought to displace human labor. You use Lily Tomlin connecting Mr. A to Mr. B. You got switching systems. You got all kinds of systems coming out of the cyber development now.
So you have to climb right now.
And it's all owned by a tiny group of plutocrats
Look,
who set the template for all our institutions, essentially.
may I just have a minute or two?
Of course, I'm sorry.
I'm well aware of things that most people aren't aware of because I have delved into the literature
Yeah.
in the field. So there's a book called Apollo's Fire by Jay Inslee, and the founder of the Apollo Alliance, okay, co-founder. And who's the Clinton, one that was the president? Bill Clinton.
Yeah, Bill
He
Clinton was our president.
he wrote a foreword to the book.
Okay.
Jay Inslee in 2005 put in an enormous document, 100 pages, over 100 pages, of what has to be done. But of course the Congress won't do it. So these are informed people.
They are informed in terms of the and constrained by the institutions we've inherited out of history.
I'd like to make my point, if I may. So there's a lot going on. Now my contribution is the 1-1000
Yeah.
network for energy independence. July 4th is approaching.
Yes, it is.
And I have this thing which I've created. I've been spending most of my life working on this, adult life. How to create a human awakening chain reaction for the common good.
Good. That's what we need.
And this, I show people this and say, are you interested in American Energy Independent Network, which is the title. Most people say, you know, it sounds good. And then I say, even they didn't know this when I spoke to him a week or two ago. And he said, who's going to give you $400 billion? I said to him, I want $800 billion. And we're not going to take it from them. We're going to require them to invest $400 billion of their wealth.
I don't like requiring anybody to do anything. I think you're going to have something where people are going to do it because they can understand it and go along
May I
with
just
it.
finish whether you like it or not? So other people may like it and hear me out. So $400 billion from wealth is a 1% on $40 trillion, which the top 10% have. Now Congress, if we get rid of the Republicans who have stopped Hillary Clinton's $50 billion, which she wanted in 2006 and 2007, energy fund, she called it a strategic energy fund.
Wait a minute, George, you're leaving now? Yeah. Okay, George is leaving, so I think that's really, he was here talking, sorry.
I can't finish my point. That's twice you've interrupted me. That's okay. I'll accept it.
It isn't okay, but my attention span is diminishing with age.
Okay, I'm not.
So I apologize, but
It's all right.
I will read your literature.
Okay.
Thank you, George. Thanks.
But I will read your
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Maybe it's good you interrupted me. I'll have to come over and I don't really have my own shows.
Thank you, George.
Is that your book too?
No.
That's his paper. You want to look at his paper? I'll get it for you. Harold's paper. I'm going to try to improve it for Harold.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
The father of public access, Professor George Stoney. Professor Emeritus.
I got a lot to say about new things. We can we can
Oh, you put mine back on? Okay. Go ahead, talk away.
we can increase the class size, not only 4 nines, how to educate students through fellowship. See, I'll read a little bit here. Choose an issue you believe in strongly, and then get 2 other people to spread the message through fellowship. Fellowship is the key to create your 1-1000 citizen network for the common good. Fellowship requires that we never hurt anyone's feelings for the common good. I made a mistake. That is nonviolence. Fellowship also requires that we help others solve their personal problems.
Let me just take a look. Very expensive. So this is what you handed me and I rejected?
That's part of it. See, my issue is basically on the back. I got something new. I put my name in here, and I said this full 4 pages. I only gave you. Let me hold this. I only gave you 2 pages, front and back. I'll show you the full one here, right here. This is the full one. So I'm talking. This is my struggle. He read this. He liked it, I think. George. Here's the inside of it. See? So people are interested in something. I don't have to waste time, energy, and they'll tell me, and I'll send it to them. And that justifies the $800 billion, 400 here and 400 here, wealth and tax. This is the actual data. I mean, not the data, the proof that it can be done. I had a lot of time to investigate. Took a lot of time to find out what wealth was and
How to redistribute the wealth.
I don't want to redistribute it. I want the rich to take 1% of their wealth, top 10%, and invest it in their houses, solar cells, fuel cells in the basement, so you can make electricity night and day, hydrogen, and super insulation like Amy Lovett has done. He can heat his house with his body heat. And they grow bananas in the winter, 6,000 feet in the Rocky Mountains. Sorry, I put that up. I picked that up. So,
All right, I got the gist that
so
it's pretty ambitious, but it is very personal. It's your trip, and your trip has not branched out from you to the rest of the world.
well, I decided to go
You're-
out now.
you're trying to
No, I
do
said,
that.
no, I've been in a tunnel vision. I've had. I haven't allowed anybody into my life hardly, so I was working on this. But now I've decided to come out and meet people and be more sensitive to the body language. I got a new 6-word thing. I'll sing it to you. Appreciate, looking, listening, awakening, loving all. Appreciate, looking, listening to body language. That was my weakness.
Uh-huh.
Awakening, loving all.
Loving all. All right, amen.
Amen.
I don't think YouTube's the answer, Joe.
So are you still going to tape me?
I don't know, I don't see that.
I can keep going.
Well, you don't get the audience unless you earn it, but sure as hell you know how many views people are.
Yeah, that's true, there's no reason we couldn't publish.
Are you going to turn it off now, or should I continue?
You know, they used to, Joe.
Give up,
you know,
okay.
They used to
I'll
have
give up.
archives out there.
But they're not overloaded with money, they get so many good